Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Our first graphic coming up is rainfall amounts, rather interesting amounts here in the last 24 hours up in the Tanana Valley area, the greater Fairbanks area. Chattanooga, 0.8 of an inch. And also in Dehne, picking up 0.9 of an inch. And Salsa River, which is off to the east-southeast of Fairbanks, they had over an inch, 1 1/3 inches of precipitation. And of course, due to the precipitation they've seen, rivers are running on the high side throughout the area there. Also in the Brooks Range, especially the northeast Brooks Range, 24-hour amounts ranging from 6 to 7/10 of an inch, especially on the west side there of the mountains, Howard Pass and Killick Pass, both picking up around that amount. And from there, by contrast, this is Togiak, Alaska, and a nice day there, definitely VFR, and drenched in early September sunshine, so quite a contrast from up in the central interior onto the north. And from there, we'll take a look at the fire danger chart. Of course, with all the precipitation, it's blank again. No areas of high fire danger. Again, the highest areas were up here in the the upper Yukon Valley again, and then some spotty areas back here to the west, but they don't quite reach the high category there with the areas of light rain they've had there in the last 24 hours. So moving on to the, whoops, already saw that chart. Moving on to satellite imagery. Clear skies, or actually not clear skies, this imagery not showing up the low clouds. It focuses on the higher clouds like the cirrus out here, or the clouds associated with storminess. And otherwise the Bering Sea, pretty tranquil, except for that front moving into the far western areas there. Just now bringing some rain into the Shimia area and picking the winds up to about 30, maybe 35 miles an hour. So not a real strong system. Actually looks a little more impressive here in the satellite imagery than it is. And high pressure controlling the remainder of the Bering Sea. A little bit of a trough through here brought definitely lower flying conditions, clouds, a little drizzle, fog. St. Lawrence Island up into the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula area. And then up here to the north, you can see clouds moving from generally northwest to southeast here and breaking up over the north slope. Most of the cloudiness off the Arctic coast or along the coast there. This batch with the rainfall shifting down into the Tanana Valley, on down into the Northway Tok area, with the heaviest rainfall amounts back in toward the central Tanana Valley zone, and a little bit to the east there of Fairbanks over toward Delta. And then this system slowly moving out of the area there of the Panhandle. This morning, a little more rainfall and showers than there are this afternoon. However, showers have lingered, or there are lingering showers lingering throughout much of the day here over the southern areas, but they're all in the decreasing mode, even some isolated ones remaining along the border up to the north here over the southeast coast. Also drying out though, and sunshine, as we saw from Togiak Bay into Bristol Bay, right up Kodiak Island, clear skies this afternoon at the state airport, and on into south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, as well as the North Gulf Coast, and mostly for Prince William Sound. Pick some clouds up there in the Copper River Basin. Of course, especially farther north and northeast, you go into that area of moisture. Very weak warm front right through here, bringing some clouds and isolated areas of light precipitation with it. Really not much of a, what amounts that have fallen aren't much at all. Again, those rainfall amounts there for the Brooks Range, mostly left over from last night, but this did add some to those totals there. Otherwise, high pressure drying it out on the east side, but rivers still remain high for the northeast Brooks Range for maybe another day or so. Out in the Bering Sea to the west, you can see a big area of high pressure at the surface here, 1,030 millibars there west of the Pribilofs, And again, this front back out to the west now, that rain band just finally getting to the far western Aleutians with a little bit of an increase in the winds, and then coming over the top of the high westerly flow, clouds, moisture, and light amounts of precipitation, mostly a reduction in the visibilities and ceilings with this feature. Isolated showers here east of that, and then again, some light precipitation up to the northeast, areas of fog around the Pribilofs, and also areas of fog along the northwest coast, such as Kivalina. For tonight, that pattern will generally continue with westerly flow over the top of this high. Not a lot of moisture with this coming out of the Russian Far East there. Doesn't have that much overwater trajectory to pick up much moisture, but enough is there and enough of a dynamic lift to produce areas of possible light rain, drizzle, fog, IFR for sure. This warm front becomes a little more juiced up, so a better chance of rain tonight for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, maybe down into the Brooks Range area. Isolated showers with that moisture-laden southwest flow, but again, these will be quite light amounts, and rainfall diminishes here for the eastern Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. Showers linger along the Alaska Range, but everything's starting to dry out there. No change southern Alaska, Kodiak Island. Maybe a few more clouds shift into Bristol Bay of the low stratus variety, and maybe some fog along the coast. Drizzle, again, possible. North side of the Alaska Peninsula. Probably won't see the 0.15 of an inch you saw at Unalaska in the today, tonight or tomorrow there. And this front trying to push eastward, but keeping the rain out to the west, or this high keeping that out to the west, and as you can see, directing up to the north and then up and over the top in toward the Arctic coast. Dry for the Panhandle, low clouds and fog out along the coast. For tomorrow, that continues, partly to mostly sunny, optimistically here for the Panhandle. But again, increasing low clouds and fog along the coastline, no gradient at all, so winds will be quite light. And some of this moisture from this system may advance all the way up to the Queen Charlotte Islands, kind of some timing differences here, but it will stay south of the Panhandle. You won't see any rain with that at least through tomorrow. And low clouds and fog in the Gulf of Alaska. This front sagging down a weak boundary of possible light precipitation now with that feature as it drops southward in toward the central interior, and some more moisture, light rain at times, not cool enough for snow. The cold air is now shifted off to the east, so the mini cold snap up there is ended for now. No more winter storm warnings for the Brooks Range, just some possible rainfall scattering out into showers on the west side. High pressure, light winds, mostly dry for the Arctic coast. And this front starting to elongate out here. Fairly decent gradient with us, so it could see some probably likely small craft advisory level winds. Gales, not that likely. A couple of low centers now, another one developing, the one staying back to the west. High pressure holding near the Pribilofs, 1,032 millibars. Maybe some rain, drizzle, IFR along the southwest coast. Sunny skies, Kodiak. Variably cloudy in Bristol Bay, mostly sunny here across southern Alaska Copper River Basin for your day on Monday, as well as possibly the southern Seward Peninsula in toward the eastern Norton Bay area. Fair over the Panhandle, and that'll continue. Look for even less clouds here over the southeast coast on Tuesday. This warm front brings a threat. I mean, it should stay mostly along the Queen Charlotte's, south of Dixon Entrance, at least the way it looks at this point in time. Sunny skies, southern Alaska, Copper River Basin, all the way out across Bristol Bay. Kodiak again, Prince William Sound, up toward the Alaska Range, pick up the clouds, chance of showers there. And then with this another warm front system coming in, cold front rain, Arctic coast, North Slope, and breezy conditions, especially out along the coastline. Could get a little gusty, maybe gust 30 miles an hour, 35 possibly. And this high pressure edging in toward the coastline. So next system pushing a little farther to the east now, bringing rain and wind into the central Aleutians, pushing northeastward but staying well to the southwest of the Pribilof Islands. And for low temperatures this morning, 30 to 33 for the central eastern Arctic coast, down to near or a little below freezing in the eastern Brooks Range. Otherwise 40s with 30s here for the eastern interior, just a little under 40 Copper River Basin. 40 to 45 south central Alaska, mid 40s out to the west, and upper 40s for the Aleutians, 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 60 to 65 here for the southeast coast, into the 60s, mid 60s Copper River Basin. Mid-60s, maybe 6, 7 there around Big Lake for south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, and lower 60s Bristol Bay. 50s in the central interior, upper 30s on the eastern Arctic coast, mid-40s for the North Slope. And for lows, Tuesday morning, back down about the same, 30 to 35, central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, North Slope into the Brooks Range, south of the mountains, 40 to 45 there over the northeast interior with mid-30s into the Copper River Basin. Otherwise, lower to mid-40s, south central Alaska, all the way out to the coast here, upper 40s, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula area, and mid to upper 40s there for the northwest coast, and 45 to 50 for the Panhandle Aleutians, same thing, 45 to 50. And for the highs, mid-60s, lower to mid here for the northeast Bristol Bay area. Another nice sunny day, south central Alaska, 60s definitely, maybe pushing upper 60s, mid to lower 50s here for the interior, and highs near 40 even on the eastern Beaufort Sea.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Shifting on into aviation weather, the weather depiction charts here showing a huge area of IFR, west central Bering Sea, right into the southwest coast, in across Norton Sound, south coast of the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, of course, Pribilofs, eastern Aleutians, north side of the Alaska Peninsula on down toward Adak and Atka. Marginal VFR, pretty widespread to start the day Monday morning here over the interior from the Alaska Range northward. Some areas IFR here, White Mountains and other hills there, as well as up along and south of the Brooks Range. Otherwise, south central Alaska, Prince William Sound, Kodiak VFR, and some marginal VFR in the Panhandle, and that pretty much stays on the central coast there into the afternoon. Otherwise, VFR. Good VFR here now, Copper River Basin, all the way down northeast Bristol Bay. Kodiak again, marginal down toward, Sitkinak, maybe AKwx, could see some marginal VFR. Otherwise, pretty good. And up into the eastern interior, 40-mile country, all the way up to the Yukon River VFR. To the west, though, marginal VFR becomes IFR up toward the Arctic coast. And Tuesday morning, IFR, Central Coast eastward to Mackenzie River Bay, or Mackenzie Bay, and back into the Brooks Range, mostly along and south of the Brooks Range, it looks at this point in time, with lingering IFR here over the mountains there north of the Tanana Valley. Also IFR, Yukon Delta, across Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. Huge area again out over the Bering Sea. Narrow band here right up along the Kuskokwim Mountains from roughly Cape Newenham, and marginal VFR into the Kuskokwim Valley. VFR, South Central Alaska Copper River Basin, marginal along the North Gulf Coast. And the afternoon Tuesday, dissipating here. Still some marginal VFR, possibly Cordova, probably off the coast of Yakutat. Good VFR across the Panhandle. Southern Alaska here, VFR, and then again toward the Alaska Range and north and west. Marginal VFR all the way up to the Central Arctic coast, where you've got IFR grazing the coastline. St. Lawrence Island, south-southwest, looks like a lot of IFR. And for the passes, Anaktuvuk for Monday, marginal VFR, both for Anaktuvuk and Adigan, pretty marginal kind of day coming up there. Lake Clark and Merrill, though, good VFR, same forecast for rainy, VFR flying, windy, VFR wide open. Isabel, same forecast. Mentasta starting out marginal, but it'll become VFR at some point in the day tomorrow. Definitely by the latter part of the afternoon, if not sooner. And for Tanita, VFR, Portage, VFR, Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 4,000 feet with that colder pool now shifting off to the east. So recovering up here, 4,000 to 6,000 feet, or actually 6,000 feet there all the way for the Arctic coast tomorrow morning. 8,000 feet become 10,000 foot freezing levels here on the high side with the upper level ridge out over the Bering Sea, and then up to 12,000 for Adak and Atka. Icing, really none out here. We've got, with the moisture coming over the top of the ridge, surges of moisture, and then a frontal boundary right through here. The next boundary brings some areas of isolated moderate rime icing of about 5,000 feet, Arctic coast, north slope into the Brooks Range, possibly south of the mountains there into the Koyukuk, maybe Kobuk Valley. None to the south of that. And then with that system out to the west there, considerable moderate rime icing pushing into the western Aleutians. This batch down here will shift up into the central Aleutians Monday evening and overnight. Upper level wind flow chart showing the upper level ridge here over the central eastern Bering Sea, kind of ridging inland over the Yukon Delta. Flow over the top of that, though, 70 to 80 knots. They're keeping that moisture coming in. And then this Arctic jet just clipping the eastern Arctic coast at 100 knots. And this upper low far enough off the southeast coast not to cause any problems with the jet well to the south. 9,000 feet, light winds. High pressure at this level over the panhandle, so very light winds into southern Alaska. Westerlies, though, central interior out to the Arctic coast, 25 to 30 knots and as high as possibly 50 knots, but that 50 knotter is probably off the coast. Much lighter here under the big high over the eastern Bering, and then southeasterlies pick up, not too bad though, 20 to 30 knots towards Shimia. 3,000 feet, same pattern, big high here over the eastern Bering. Southeast, 25 to 30 to the west of the ridge. Light across southern Alaska. Westerlies in the interior, 20 to 25 knots, as high as 40 knots in the eastern Arctic coast. Very light winds, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, and Panhandle under high pressure. And turbulence, areas of light to isolated moderate chop below 4,000 feet along the Brooks Range, locally south areas, and moderate chop eastern Arctic coast, and some moderate turbulence out over the Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things, coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the northern lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the northern lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get one hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you're lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything, so you got to remember that luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot of change here from yesterday. In fact, it'd be pretty hard to notice with the scale we're using here. But ship report near Prudhoe Bay saying ice was off to the east-southeast of there. So it's in pretty close here along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, maybe even areas on the coast there off to the eastward Kaktovik to Demarcation Point. There was some thinning up in this area. Otherwise, this zone through here is just sort of in a stationary status quo, just sort of moving around a little bit. Later on in the week, maybe some southwest winds in through here that might push it off to the northeast or east a little bit, but that's off in the distance. Anyway, so no big changes coming up for the sea ice up there. Coastal water forecast pretty light, 5 to 10 knots out of the northwest here along the coast, seas 5 feet. Light winds over the southern inside waters as well at about 10 knots, south 15 for Lynn Canal, 3-foot seas. And for Tuesday, northerlies at 10 knots here for the inside waters, most areas there, seas 2 feet. Very light winds out along the coast, so a couple of really light wind days coming up here for the Panhandle area and the coastals. You can see the seas down to 3 to 4 feet. Prince William Sound, light winds out of the southwest tomorrow, or variable, light and variable, seas 2 feet or less. And same thing here for the North Gulf Coast, variable winds at 10, 3-foot seas. Northwesterlies 15 to 20, Barren Islands back into Kamishak Bay, 4-foot seas. That's about it. Otherwise, Cook Inlet and north at 10 with 1 to 2-foot seas. And for Tuesday, not much change in the light wind pattern here. Northwest, Cook Inlet at 10 with 2-foot seas. West 15, Kamishak Bay and the Barrens, seas on the low side. Slight seas with light winds here from the North Gulf Coast, as well as Prince William Sound, predominantly from the northwest at 10. And for Kodiak Island, east side there, north at 10, maybe 15 knots out of the west for Shelikof Strait, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, northwest 15, Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, north at 15, and west at 10 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, kick it up to 15 with 3-foot seas for Bristol Bay. Northwest 15 for the bay on Tuesday, north 15 here for the peninsula, 3 to 4-foot seas, and light north to northwest winds at 10 knots there for the Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait areas. Eastern Aleutians, Fox Islands tomorrow. Unalaska Island, northeast at 10 to 15. Unamak Island, easterlies at about 20. Small craft advisories kick in here from Atka to Adak and actually extend all the way out to Shimian-Attu. 25 to 30 knots, becoming predominantly 30-knot winds from the southeast here for the western Aleutians, seas 11 to 12 feet. And for Tuesday, those winds come down to 20 knots out here, Kiska Island on out to the west, but hold at 30 knots there east of Kiska Island. Now we've got minimum gales coming in, at least in a narrow band ahead of that frontal boundary. 35-knot winds, 11 to 16-foot seas. For the eastern Aleutians, southeast 20, 4 to 6-foot seas. Southwest coast, north of Nunivak Island, westerlies at 20 knots, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. Southwest 20 for Norton Sound. South of Nunivak Island, northwest 15, light winds for the Pribilofs, westerlies 20 for the northern Bering Sea. And then on Tuesday, southeast 20 knots there for St. Matthew Island, southeast 15 for the Pribilofs, northerlies 10 to 15 along the southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, and Norton Sound west to 20 with 5 to 6-foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastal forecasts. Small craft advisories and brisk wind advisories depending on where you are here in the sea ice. 25 knots with seas up to 4 feet. Southwest 15 to 20 on the western Arctic coast. Wales up to Cape Lismore, southwest of 20. And then for the Tuesday outlook, we've got small craft advisories here from the Bering Strait all the way up on the east or the west side of the coast here, at least to about roughly the latitude of Point Ley. Then they turn southeast and 20 on the central coast and kind of a variable direction, 15 knots for the east side. And for tonight, again, we got a warm front bringing a chance of light rain with it for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast into possibly the Berks Range. And I wouldn't look for much getting south of the mountains there. Actually, some of that moisture left over, and that whole area here for the eastern Tanana Valley, central, diminishing into showers, decreasing. Isolated showers back to the west. Low clouds, fog, IFR, drizzle here, Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. High pressure for the Bering Sea. Next front pushing inland, trying to push eastward. And a better system kicks in on Tuesday out there. High pressure, sunny skies, southern Alaska and the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.